So I've been thinking recently about a weakness of my writing. I mean, it might even be a weakness in my playing when it comes to not that I don't understand. That's not the right word, but being able to really pick out in the timing what's going on. Meaning, as you see kind of written out here with basically bass drum and snare, are some patterns when it comes to timing and beats. And even, I mean, you could translate this in the bass, you could translate it in the guitar. Right now I have eighth notes into a triplet eighth notes. It's kind of where I started off. The intention of this was to kind of just hear these rhythms in my head and get used to them, to kind of figure out when I'm doing something what I'm actually hearing. It's not just, obviously, I did this eighth notes, then right here we have quarter notes and triple eighth notes right here. Then I go into a dotted eighth into a 16th, followed by, so it was kind of where to, I do triplets a lot, coming, it's mostly when you're doing hammer-ons and pickoffs. So, I mean, it's just kind of, when the triplet comes up, it's got to flow naturally in the song. And if you force something, it doesn't sound 100% right. And that's what I was just trying to kind of see. When I'm doing something naturally, it just kind of comes out and flows. But then when it's time to, put other music to it, get a tempo, get a drum track, a bass track over it, something that's keeping timing of what I'm doing, that's where I kind of find the most challenge. It's like, well, what am I doing? Because I don't always write in 4/4, but as you're looking at this, everything is in 4/4. So I decided to kind of like look at things in 4/4 and then maybe expand this into other time signatures as need be. I know I write in 3/4 a lot, and I find, and maybe it's because of Tool, that if I ever play in drop D, which I don't do very often, but if I do play in drop D, that's when I start changing time signatures and sometimes even changing tempos, and that's another thing. A lot of the songs that I do, there have been times where I've changed tempo, but it's usually going from one section into another. I think when I'm just playing naturally, sometimes I have a tendency to change tempos in the middle of doing what I'm doing, because one of my musical ADD things is, and maybe this is where the problem comes from, when I start doing something over and over again, like a rhythm, it's why I don't really like being a rhythm guitarist, I get caught in wanting to do something different. I don't want to keep doing the same rhythm over and over again. So I add little things that, expand on the basic rhythm that I'm doing. And eventually I might even, because I'm improvising a lot of these stuff, lose the actual original rhythm that I'm playing, and it kind of morphs into something else, where if I was, organically with a band, I could do that kind of thing, but I might replicate it again, and the song might evolve that way. And I think that's where my songwriting would be better, if I could record myself kind of doing that stuff, getting some kind of a semblance of where the timing is, adding everything, because the one thing that can happen with no timing in the background too is you can get really loose with the tempo and just start playing sloppily. So I'm trying to kind of tighten my sound, and being alone, it's kind of hard to tighten when you're not playing with somebody else. A lot of times the timing and the the tightening of the sound comes from just knowing each other, playing off each other, and as I said, naturally building a song rather than, all right, this sounds cool, I kind of want to find something. It's not to say that the other stuff doesn't happen naturally. It's just a matter of sometimes I have to take a step back or do something different in order to cohesively make the pieces come together, like really think it out and then kind of gel together. It's even just something in one of the songs I've kind of have going now. I kind of just threw everything together because it kind of did work, but I don't feel like it flows as cleanly as it should into one part and the other, and you can definitely clean that up. But I do like the parts, and they all kind of fit together, so it's just kind of cleaning that up and trying to write something and maybe organically get these songs out, and it probably would happen quicker too, because I don't have to take the time to kind of sort it out. And I've kind of started doing that too, even with that Instagram video, but I would just like to do that a little bit more. So I don't know how this is going to sound, but I'm going to try it. So I'm going to do, this would be the eighth notes with the 8-note triplets at the end. So it sounds like this. Alright, so we got to get this back to the beginning. This would be quarter notes with the 8-note triplets. So here is where we have the dotted 8th into the 16th into the 8-note triplets. So here I kind of started mixing it up a little bit. I decided to start with the 8th note, dotted 8th note, then the 16th into a quarter, into 2/8 into the triplets, the 8th triplets, the 8-note triplets. Can't talk, 8th note triplets. And then I even changed it up here real quick. I went into it. This is where I changed it from 8th note to quarter. Then you do the quarter note 8 note, or the dotted 8 note, into the quarter note, back into the triplets. So here I changed where the triplet happens. I do the 8 note into the triplet. And actually, you know what I'm going to do to change this one up a little bit? I'm going to go back and keep the triplet back here and then let it run. And then obviously you'll see that changes right here a little bit. We'll worry about that in a second. So the one thing you see in that is, obviously it's pretty steady. When you would write something, you wouldn't make it that repetitive too in the bars. I think it's better to change the measures, but this is just to kind of get some of those rhythms in your head. I don't, at the same time, I feel like this could be a cheat template. I mean, anyone could do this. I don't, and maybe I will find something out of this that, I write, I kind of find it a cookie cutter kind of way of writing, because you're just kind of hearing the rhythm, being like, all right, I'll put this here, put that there, and then you're kind of hoping that it sounds good that way. But I feel like in doing this too, it's just a practice in hearing those to where eventually when you're playing, you get those styles just second nature, which they kind of are to me, but you actually hear the second nature of, and you know what you're listening to. I mean, you do that with the notes, but I never really did that with the rhythm. And, obviously there's ways to count it out in your head and do it slow to learn that, but I've always been more audio when it comes to that, more like hear a beat, hear a rhythm, and then regurgitate that. And that's been a blessing and a curse, I'd say, at the same time. So this only happens for 2 bars, but I decided to do what you could call like a fake triplet, but it's basically 2 16ths and an eighth. Metallica does this a lot, and I mix it in with a quarter and 2 eighth notes, and then goes back to the 16th into. So this is kind of me actually changing things up a little bit, but it only happens for 2 bars. So this is kind of like an example of, putting everything in, and I took the triplets away. I should have probably put them in. I can make a longer one, but I'll probably do that just as I'm studying all this and kind of getting the feel for everything back in. I feel like I'm just like reverting back to a real basic, that maybe I feel like I've lost the fundamental of this and need to do that. So before we go on to that, I want to hear that one more time. So I'll probably do some more stuff like that, the cookie cutter kind of thing. And like I said, it's all just to kind of get used to it, and maybe at faster tempos. Right now I'm using 100. I feel like that's just a steady tempo, where obviously it's above 60, 60, which is a beat per second. It just kind of gets you the feel. If you go too fast, it's just gonna jumble together. You'll hear the difference, but I would slowly increase my speed, just to kind of hear how things fast. Now this tempo right here I've never really used before. I've heard it a few times. I haven't really found a song to use this on. Maybe a polyrhythm would be good with this, like a 3-4 kind of thing. It might sound cool, but this is the just basically the bass drums doing the triplets, while the snare is just hitting every quarter note in 4/4. So here we change it up a little bit and kind of go into the Metallica kind of way, where a lot of Metallica songs have this 2 eighth notes and a 16th note, or what am I talking about? 2 16th note and 1 eighth note, where it kind of repeats and kind of creates a fake triplet, where on the main beat you're kind of hitting in the middle of the notes, so it kind of creates this effect. You're hitting basically in the middle. You'll hear it. So actually, we got to stop it there, because that led into where I just decided to do 3 16 notes, a rest. So it kind of creates this gallop kind of sound. I've used this one actually before in War Goes On. This is actually the exact pattern I use from that. So maybe I'll use it again. I feel like it's been used a few times in a bunch of songs, but I do like this one. This is going back to the original way. So if we put it all together and just let this run through real quick. You know what? That doesn't really sound that different. I feel like there's something off with that. And I know what it is. I'll fix that. But that's just kind of why you do this experiment. You know, you kind of like... and I think it has to do with this program. I do like Guitar Pro 7. I don't know... Well, I've kind of heard how it sounds. I might have to, fix a lot of this in post. I don't know why my settings are jumping up and down. That's annoying me. But that's kind of just my rhythm idea. It just kind of, you get these foundations or you break out of it and, you don't go back to it. You just get stuck. Doing little things, I think sometimes, going back into doing this basic stuff, even if you're advanced past that, it's I don't think it hurts to do this kind of thing, because if you ignore it, it just causes your playing to be weaker than it should be. So this seems, I don't know, if some people might think it's stupid, some people might think you should know this already, whatever it is. If you don't do it, or if you don't clean it up, whatever level you're at, it's gonna hurt you. And even if you think you are that good, and if you kind of look at the idea and you go back to it, and you're just, you might just stumble into something that you really, weren't expecting, and come up with some new ideas in rhythms, especially if you're stuck. And that was where I felt like, I was getting stuck into the, quarter note, eighth note, 16th note kind of thing, where you're just going back and forth between that, and you're just chugging along with that, and it kind of just makes things stale, and you're just writing the same kind of song with maybe a different chord progression, a different mode that you're in, but it's still the same rhythm over and over again, and you're just replacing. You just go back, and like I said, that's almost like a cookie cutter way of writing songs at that point. So that's what I'm trying to break out of. There's definitely so many options that you can play with, and that's why I think it's good to hear it. You can go for 2 bars and repeat. You can go 3, 4, 5. You can do 8 completely different, bars before repeating. You can do so much, and there's so much to choose from. That's why I want to break out of what I'm doing. So I'm going to end this here. This was just kind of like an idea that I had that, I wanted to really kind of look at, and still ironing out some kinks, obviously, with this program, because I feel like the 16th and the 8th, where it's hitting, isn't exactly where I want to hit. I guess just to clarify what I want to happen is I want to hear more of a space between the 16th and the 8th note, to where there would actually be a rest in between the 8th note and the 16th, because the gallop pattern kind of sounds the same as the 3/16. I mean, technically this is a 16th, or an 8th I should say, right here. I want the rest here, and that's another thing also in doing this. I've had some ideas in songs that I've never really put in there yet. I guess I'll say it. I feel like rests are just as important as played notes, and I've heard other people say it, but where all of a sudden there's a break, or that tension, or you want something to finish, really goes a long way. I'll always think of In Flames' song "Food for the Gods," where he does the fill, he just rolls down the toms, and right where you think he's going to hit the cymbal, he stops. He does a rest, and the whole band rests, and it's just like, oh, I want that chorus to come in, and it gives you that little bit of anticipation, because all of a sudden you're expecting that roll to just all of a sudden end with that cymbal crash, but he waits before he gives it to you, and that's just, it's so simple but so genius in doing that kind of stuff. I think even Beato has talked about that in one of his videos. Now I'm just rambling. I'm going off. I wanted to keep this kind of concise, but I'm kind of excited about this. It's kind of one of the more excited things that I've wanted to do and talk about. So that's it. You didn't see me. You just stared at these notes of bass and snare. I'm sorry about that, but I'll try and do more. Thanks. Later on.